I think it's certainly highly likely that if the joint venture doesn't proceed, then De La Rue would not continue to print banknotes here, essentially because there are other governments around the world who would be interested in this kind of investment and would be prepared to make the long-term commitment to be able to do that. I think it's unfair to suggest that we're trying to hold the government to ransom, because clearly the government has a choice that it can make, and whether it wants to invest in the joint venture and proceed that way, or whether it wants to take another course of action, which obviously is perfectly open to do. So I think it's unfair to suggest that we're trying to hold the government to ransom. We're not. We're just trying to make it clear really what our business position is, so that the government can take whatever it believes is the right decision for their discussions with the government. We have put forward a business plan for the joint venture, which obviously covers potential plans for future investment. Clearly any decisions on future investment will be taken by the board of the joint venture in the same way as they would for any other commercial organisation. So clearly it will look at the investment, the business case, and all of the normal parameters that you would expect to be considered in any investment decision. The assets and so on, I mean, just to be clear, the assets which are being transferred and which will therefore be 40% of which will then effectively be purchased by the government, those have been quite clearly listed as part of the documentation around the transaction, and so there is a full list of assets which basically covers all of the assets which the operational assets which exist in that company at the moment. So it's a completely clear list of those assets which is actually being transferred as part of the process. In terms of this suggestion that the technology here is obsolete, yes, it's true to say that the machinery which is in there is not brand new, but obviously the capital equipment of this type does have a relatively long life, and I think it's also important to understand that banknote technology is quite mature and quite well established. So, for example, the major printing process which is used in banknotes, the so-called intaglio process, is basically a 500-year-old process, and therefore it's not as though the technology of those things is changing that dramatically, and the equipment that we have in Ruaraka is perfectly capable of producing the highest quality banknotes which you see circulating in the world today.